So I didn't see this for a while, and then I started seeing it in a, that doesn't make any sense. Let's start over. So I ran into this situation in a Python, built a Python server, and it actually runs on an ESP8266, but I actually have a way of running it in a test case, the exact same server on my Windows machine, and I see the same problem when I use certain browsers to connect to this server. And oh man, what does it look like? Do I have an example here? So I have this super simple, oh, there it is. I have this super simple ESP8266 app, and basically you click around on it, and here it's running on localhost, so that using the Python locally. And if I wanted to, I could actually connect to an IoT device that's running the exact same service, which is kind of cool. But I ran into this, and here you have connection closed because timed out. And I got really weirded out by this and don't understand what's happening. In the beginning, I didn't see this at all, and I made some weird changes to the server. And so I thought it was actually a server problem, but I don't know. So anyway, let's just talk about it because the browsers actually treat this the same. I found it super interesting. So in this case, what I did was, can I make this bigger? Nope. Well, so much for that. Anyway, what I did, man, that is really annoying. Okay, so we're going to skip that. So basically what happens is the orange here and the blue are two different socket connections that get made. And one of them at the 0.3 second mark, that's the one where we do a get on the URL. And then when that one completes without doing anything else, so this one is, I just hit the refresh button on / hit the little circle thing, or I hit the return key, I don't remember which. And what happens is, as soon as the first request is processed, a second connection is opened, and then I have a 10-second timeout on this. You know what, can I make this bigger? Let's see, I can zoom the selection. No, that's dumb. You know what? I'm gonna leave it. So anyway, no, maybe I can zoom a little bit. 200? That's never gonna work. Oh, that was the worst idea ever. Let's go back to 100%. So I'm gonna try zooming one more time. Let's do custom 130. All right, there we go. Yeah, so what you can see here, right, is you can see at the 0.3 seconds, we do this get, and it's on / and it returns a 200, okay. And then a half second later, you can see, even though nothing else is happening, a socket is open, but no get call ever happens. Originally, I thought this was favicon, but it's not, because I fixed that with the style in the markup. And then I have a 10-second connection timeout. So you can see here at almost exactly 10 seconds after the time the second connection was open, I ended up with this timeout. And then you can see later that actually, and you can see the timeout actually is initiated on the port 80 side going back to the originator. And you can see here 64084 and 64086 are the sockets that were used from the browser to call into this. So it's really interesting. So then I played around with this a little bit, and I have another one. So in this one, let me see if I can make this work and make this guy zoom, because I didn't plan this out. So let's just do custom 120, 30. Yeah, maybe. Okay. So in this one, you can see we kind of have the same thing. So this one is hitting the button twice on it. So I've got a button, and you can actually, yeah. So that's this get out, right? So we have the 64554 socket, opens a connection to port 80. And this is all done with Wireshark, by the way, if I didn't say that. And we can see we did a get on it, and that one processes in about 0.3 of a second. Well, no, it's way faster than that. And then a couple tenths of a second later, when that response is done, it opens up another socket, and then I do, and then you can see at the 5.6 second mark, I actually hit the button again, right? So it actually uses the same connection that was open 5 seconds before, because it's pre-staged the connection. And then in this case, right, so as soon as the one request was done, it pre-staged another connection. At 5 seconds after that, I actually clicked the button and it processed it. And that's the end of the Wireshark I did. So we can see here a really good example where we hit we hit a button on a URL, and as soon as that one processed, Chrome immediately opened another connection, and as long as it was within the 10-second timeout I set, it will reuse that connection to make the request. Okay. Now it turns out that Edge does something similar but subtly different. So in this case, what I did was I did a refresh also. This one's a little weirder. And there's 3 colors here because what actually happens is 2 connections are opened immediately. So this behavior is different. In the other one in Chrome, a second connection was opened as soon as the first one was complete. In Edge, it actually stages 2 connections immediately. And the first one actually processes the first request. And as soon as that one's done, immediately Edge opens a second connection. Make sure there's a second connection. So it actually stages 2 connections. Let me see if I can do this again. Here, let's see, 120 this time. All right, so you can see here, 2 connections get open, and the reason this is Wireshark frame 7 is it actually tries to open a IPv6 connection, which this server doesn't support. So we open 2 connections immediately, 0.3. One of those actually is the GET request, right? But 2 connections were open, and and so that's kind of in line with what we said before, that 0.3 thing. And then at 0.56, so as soon as that first request is done, another connection is open, and you can see 63281 and 63282 are the initial ports. 63281 handles the first request. 63284 is then opened, and then at the 10-second mark, so I just let it sit around with a 10-second connection timeout. At the 10-second mark, the second connection times out, and then 10 seconds later, the third connection times out. So it's a little weird. That connection timeout thing is from the time it becomes the primary connection or something. I don't know. Anyway, but the net point here is Edge does something a little different. It actually opens 2 connections immediately, and it makes sure that 2 are staged. And I played with this in another situation where I got slightly different behavior. This one's going to be really big. So in this one, what actually happened was there were 2 requests, and so we still end up with a timeout. We end up with slightly different behavior. I created a connection. I made a request on slash. You know what? We can do this one too. Why not? So I made a request on slash. 2 connections were open. The first one handled the request, and then immediately, again, around, within 0.2 of a second, basically, of the time the first request was handled, a second connection was open. So now there's actually 2 connections still open in Edge here because it tries to maintain those 2 connections. And then I actually did a get on slash, and that processed the first one, right? So you can see that's at the 5-second mark. So we let the connection hang open, but I didn't wait for it to time out on the 10 seconds. And then the third connection, which had already been opened immediately after the first was processed, so that I had open connections, 10 seconds after the second connection was complete, the third connection timed out. And I think that's this is an ESP8266. Oh no, this was actually on a Windows machine. It's just the way the Python server connection timeout. It's a little funky. It's not from the time the connection is open necessarily, but it's like from the time it would be next to be queued up, I guess, because maybe it's not. Anyway, so the net result of this is the same, right? We opened a request, we opened 2 connections, Edge opened 2 connections, we processed one of those, and then Edge immediately opened a third connection so that it had 2 available. And that's pretty much what I wanted to show, that when you're working with Edge or Chrome with like a handcrafted web server, you'll see these weird extra connections, and that's because I'm staging. And then your question is, how long I set the timeout at 10 seconds so that you see this, so I didn't see resources. But the reality is I probably should set it like 30 seconds, maybe something longer, something long enough where a user will probably come back and click on it, so the number of timeouts is reduced. This is actually also covered. The screenshots for this are covered in a blog article. Let me see if I can pull this one up. And that's this guy right here. Right? And So that's that guy right there, browsers, extra connections, and anticipation of additional requests. And if you scroll through it, you'll see that basically all these screenshots are in there, and you can click on those and get the zoomed version. So I hope that's useful. Have a great day. And now you know what browser weirdness sometimes happens.